Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where today I'm going to be doing a chatty get ready with me. This is going to be about a serious topic though. I announced several videos ago that I am pregnant and we are really excited and delighted with that news. However, I did tell you guys in that video that we were surprised. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why. I'm going to be telling you guys about our journey with infertility, stillbirth, and miscarriages. If any of that is a trigger for you, this is probably not the video for you to watch. Move on to something else, come back another time. Usually my videos are pretty upbeat. My name is Rachel, if you haven't been here before. I love to play with colorful eyeshadow. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom, and I upload about 3 videos a week, all eyeshadow related content. In today's video, I'm going to be doing my eyeshadow while talking to you guys. But again, if this is not a topic which you're comfortable with, then just move on and come back another day. If you like what you see and you want to see more, I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing. And without further ado, let's get going. Because this video is going to be so chatty, I'm not going to be talking too much about the makeup itself. I just wanted to let you know, I recently did some videos where I was talking about the least used shades within each palette, and Passion in Paris came up, and I pointed out this shade here, City of Light, as a shadow which doesn't really get much use, but I thought it was really pretty, and so I kind of want to use it, and I kind of want to use Versailles. So I don't have a firm plan about today's look, but I do want to use those two shadows. First, I'm going to zoom you in and prime my eyes with the Glamlight Icing Primer in the shade White Frosting. I do need to give you guys a little bit of a warning. I have been very emotional for about 2 days now. Really emotional. Yesterday was a Sunday. We were at church for most of the day, but I spent the whole day with just silent tears streaming down my cheeks. For no real reason. I think it was pretty much hormones. It wasn't ugly crying, you know, like weeping in the bathroom, although that did happen a couple of times. It was just tears streaming out of my eyes. I could not control it. You know how if there's a reason for it, you can address it rationally? Like, this thing is upsetting me, therefore I can deal with it in a rational, reasonable way and sort of mentally work through it. No, you can't do that. If it's hormones, there's no reason. It's just craziness. It's just, I don't know. That was me yesterday. So my husband would be like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" I'm like, "I don't know." So I have to tell you that now because yesterday I wanted to make this video, but it didn't happen because of scheduling and whatnot. But I also was not in the mental place to do that. Like, I didn't have the fortitude I needed to get through the video. I'm hoping that today I do. I still feel pretty emotional today, but not quite to the level of yesterday. And the reason I'm making a video today is because I feel really crabby. I just feel crazy irritable. Everything is annoying me. Everything is annoying me. And I knew that making a video would help me relax, give me someone to talk to, even if you guys only answer back in the comments, and also get my creative juices flowing as I put on eyeshadow. So I knew that it would help me feel better, and that's the biggest reason I'm making a video today. And I feel like I'm kind of in the emotional space where I can talk about our infertility journey and everything with you guys. So I think I'm just going to start with this color and blend it out with that one and then dip into the shimmers that I want to use. Okay, so first off, I have to say, I know that this is a YouTube video and you guys are essentially a group of strangers on the internet. I understand I do not have to explain myself or my story or anything to you guys. This is a personal, private matter where I'm choosing to share parts with you guys so that you can round me out as a person maybe, and it also explains some things about me, and I don't know, I'm choosing to share it with you. I know it's not required, and I don't have to share any of this with anyone, really. Let me start at the beginning. I think I'll go chronologically as much as I can, just so I can keep track. My husband and I, for various medical reasons, never expected to be able to have children naturally. We always figured that when we were ready to have kids, we would have to do IVF or something like that. And the idea of foster and adoption was very much in the back of our minds in case we weren't able to have kids. So we got married in 2010, and in 2011, I discovered that I was pregnant, and that was quite a surprise. Let me tell you, quite a surprise. And we're like, really? Really? And I had a blood test for it, so I knew it was more accurate than urine, and I was like, wow, okay. Was not expecting that, but clearly God had other plans. So that pregnancy was, I mentioned in my pregnancy announcement video, that pregnancy was pretty rough. But aside from that, the pregnancy went well, and I had a home birth, which I know I talked about in a different video, and we ended up with a beautiful and wonderful little baby girl in our arms, and that was awesome. This blue is a really pretty color when you blend it out. It's super dark, but then when you blend it out, it goes sort of, ooh, I don't know, like a deep ocean kind of color. Well, I got pregnant again relatively shortly thereafter. I don't remember the exact timeline. It was in 2013, so the next year I got pregnant because I was due in January of 2014. It was pretty much the same. I was sick a lot, but things were progressing well, and I do remember at some point I stopped feeling sick, and my belly wasn't growing as fast, and I thought that it was because I was eating better, because I put on a decent amount of weight with my first child because I was so sick all the time. But the only food that would stay down most of the time was carbohydrates. So I ate lots of breads and pastas. It was the only thing that I could keep down. And even that didn't usually stay down. But anyway, I did put on a decent amount of weight with her. But for the second pregnancy, I didn't put on as much weight. And I thought that it was because when I started to feel a little bit better several months in, I was able to make better food choices. Things just seemed a little bit smoother. Well, a few weeks later, before my next midwife appointment, I woke up in the morning and I had a little bit of bleeding. And I thought, that's a little concerning, you know? So I contacted her. She's like, okay, let me put an order in for an ultrasound. Because she didn't have the technology in her office to do an ultrasound, which my current midwife does. But the midwife back then did not. And so she scheduled me for an ultrasound. My husband and I went, my mom was watching our daughter. So we're in the ultrasound office, and the technician comes in and starts doing his thing. And maybe it was a girl. I think it was a girl. I don't remember. She says, "I'm so sorry. I don't see a heartbeat." So naturally, that had us reeling a little bit. And she searched a bit more. Obviously, the ultrasound technology is better than the Doppler as far as seeing clearly what you need to see. And there was no heartbeat. So she took some measurements, and then she went out and got the doctor, who after a little while came in and talked to us. And I, at this point, was 28 weeks. But they had determined by the size of the femur measurements, like the long bone measurements within the scan, they had determined that the baby had passed away around 18 weeks. And I'm like, wait, how is that possible? How could this baby be inside of me for 10 weeks, not alive, and I'm not sick? Like, you'd think that I would have gotten septic by that point because the body, like the baby inside me, was dead. So it was really puzzling that I wasn't sick. I wasn't having any symptoms at all of there being a problem. And it took 10 weeks for me to even bleed a little bit that would indicate that we should go get an ultrasound. It was maybe someone within the industry wouldn't be surprised by this, but I was really surprised by it. And we're like, what is going on? And now what do we do? You can probably hear my baby on the monitor. That little, I'm not going to turn the monitor off today, or even lower, because given today's topic, I find the sounds very comforting. Okay, so anyway, the conversation then had to shift to, where do we go next? Where do we deliver the baby? There's the option of inducing and delivering at home. And I thought, well, that of course is what we wanted originally. We wanted a home birth. But if this baby has been dead inside of my body for 10 weeks, I had no idea the state that the baby's body would be in, like a state of deterioration. Again, really confused as to why I wasn't sick, feverish, nausea, anything at all. So another option would have been to deliver in the birthing center. Kind of the same problem though. I was like, yeah, but I still don't know. I mean, if there's something wrong, if the baby's body has deteriorated, if I'm not able to deliver everything, then I'm going to have to end up in a hospital anyway for them to do a D&C. And so I was like, why don't we just go to a hospital and I can try to deliver naturally. And then if there's a problem, we're already in place. We'd get a D&C done immediately, take care of everything in one spot instead of having to have the additional stress and roller coaster of going to either our house or the birthing center, having the baby, and then having to transfer again because something went wrong. Not to mention, if there was something wrong that wasn't obvious, the hospital would be able to determine that better than we could outside of it. So that's what we decided to do. So my midwife had a very good relationship with a hospital that was like an hour and a half from us. And we decided, let's just go there because she knows the doctors, she knows the whole staff, that everybody respects her within her profession, and she can be a patient advocate. Whereas sometimes midwives are not very well respected in certain hospital settings. You know, maybe there's some friction between the two professions, and we wanted there to be no additional issue. So we traveled to this further hospital, but we first had to get our daughter from my mom. My mother-in-law, it was easier for her to take my daughter for an overnight because of my mom's commitments. So we transferred her to my mother-in-law. And here's something I'll never forget. I remember meeting my mother-in-law at a gas station somewhere en route to the hospital. My daughter was confused. She could tell that emotionally something was off. And so she just kept looking back and forth between all the adults. Like, what's happening? She wasn't fussy. She wasn't moody or cranky. She was just silent and looking back and forth. And it was so interesting to me how the little kids can read the emotional temperature of a situation and be like, I don't know what's going on, but something's off, you know? Anyway, when we met my mother-in-law at the gas station, I will never forget this. I watched her. She was confused because we didn't really have any information that we could share with the family. It was just, this is where we are now and we're going to get this taken care of. And so she was like, you know, like, where do I start? What's going on? But we didn't have answers, and it was just a very confusing and very quick meet at the gas station, give her the little one, and then drive on to the hospital. So I think she was trying not to ask questions, but she was just puzzled. And like, you want answers, but there are no answers to find. But what I'll never forget is watching her drive away, because I could see her silhouette as she drove away. And I remember watching her wipe tears away from her eyes as she drove away with my little daughter in the back seat, this little brown head bobbing away down the road. It was just, it's like something that's imprinted in my mind. When you see a really tender side of somebody, because I love my mother-in-law, she's awesome. You don't always see that very tender side of her. And it was just so touching and just ingrained in my mind, that one scene of her silhouetted driving away as she wiped tears from her eyes because she was confused. She had no answers. We had no answers. It was hyper emotional for everyone. We drove on to the hospital. When we got there, again, the staff was great. They were wonderful. My midwife stayed with us. She didn't have to, but she stayed with us as a patient advocate and stayed with us the whole time. And what they did was they put a little dissolvable pill next to my cervix, and that induced contractions. The goal was to get me to deliver naturally so that we wouldn't have to do surgery. They didn't want to do a D&E, which is dilation and evacuation, which is where they go in and remove everything. A D&C is the dilation and curettage, I think, which is where they go in and they just scrape out whatever's left behind. I have heard that one is obviously more intense and extensive than the other. So the goal was, if necessary, just do a D&C and not have to do a D&E. So after several hours of contractions and labor, I decided to go in the shower. So I was in the shower under the hot water trying to relax my muscles when I delivered the baby right there onto the tiled floor. And it was very strange because the baby was still fully encapsulated in the placenta. Like when I delivered, everything came out at once. So my midwife came in and scooped it up and took it into the other room while I recovered and again tried to relax a bit while they did what they needed to do, which I didn't really want to know about. My midwife came into the room while the hospital staff was doing what they needed to do, and she told me that it was a boy, which kind of set me off again. Not that I wasn't already set off, but it kind of set me off again because all of a sudden my brain started filling up with all of these images of my husband with a son. And it was like looking into the future and seeing all these different moments that weren't going to happen. So that definitely got me going again. But anyway, after a few minutes, I was able to come out of the bathroom and went over and laid in the bed. And what the hospital staff was doing was they were looking at, they had taken the baby away to examine the body. And they were able to come back and tell me, hey, everything came out. Apparently, because everything was encapsulated in the placenta, when I delivered the placenta, it included everything. There was nothing, there couldn't possibly have been anything left behind inside of me that would require surgery. So that was a godsend. That was great. So I was really, really grateful that everything was delivered and they didn't need to do a D&C at all. Then the next thing they said was, well, less what they said and more in conversation, we determined the reason that I had stopped feeling sick because of the pregnancy was because when the baby died, my body stopped producing all the hormones and the stuff that it needed to support the pregnancy. Therefore, it wasn't affecting me as a pregnant woman. And then the other thing was that the reason I never got sick, I never had a fever, never had any bleeding, and never had anything happen physically to me because of the baby's death. We figured out that was because the baby had been fully contained in the placenta. So the placenta was kind of keeping everything together, making it so that nothing went into the placenta to start deteriorating the body, and nothing came out of the placenta to make me sick. So the baby's body was actually fully formed and perfect up to the 18-week point where he died. And then his body stopped growing, but it also didn't start to break down because he was encased in the placenta. So that, of course, set me off again, because then I was just thinking about, babies are safe inside their mother's wombs, right? That's like the safe cocoon for them to be. And I was thinking, even after he died, my body had still contained him in this warm little pouch where nothing bad could get in and hurt him. Whew. I'm going to dip into the turquoise palette, BH Cosmetics Birthstone series. I think I'll just take the turquoise shade because it's a light shimmer, and I'll put this on top of the white in my inner corner. So we ended up staying in the hospital for, I think it was just overnight. Then we went to my in-laws' house. And this, by the way, I was due January of 2014. So our daughter would have been almost 2. I delivered our son, whom we named Isaac. I delivered Isaac on Halloween of 2013, which was just a few days before my birthday. Anyway, we went to my in-laws' house and stayed there for several days just to kind of get away from home, And then we went home, and it was really depressing to go home. We had moved our daughter to a big girl bed, a toddler bed. And we had a room set up in the house as a nursery. So it had the crib, and it had all the baby things and diapers and clothes and everything you need for a new baby. Some people had made quilts and little baby blankets. And we had we had moved into a bigger house to get ready for this next child. And we had gotten a bigger car, all these things to accommodate this new change. So going home was actually even more depressing than I expected it to be, because not only were we empty-armed, and we had all of that trauma to deal with and process, but also everything in the house, including the house itself, was a reminder that we didn't have this baby. And that kind of sunk me into a depression. Which lasted the better part of a year. And I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize that I was depressed. We had also just started a business, and my husband was really busy with that and also working full time because his work was supporting us and the business was on the side and slowly growing. He wasn't as emotionally engaged to notice that I wasn't okay. And I was busy taking care of our 1-year-old, so I also didn't notice that I wasn't okay. I wasn't so depressed that it really extended into the rest of my life, but I didn't really have much of a life. I basically stayed at home with the little one as a stay-at-home mom. And so there wasn't anybody else to really notice that I was not okay either. It was kind of an interesting experience. Now I can look back and know I was depressed. And now, having experienced it myself, I've never been depressed since. But it helped me to learn to read myself better. Does that make sense? I was kind of messed up from that for a while. And then we didn't have any pregnancies for a while. So I didn't have the opportunity to emotionally heal or close that chapter by having another baby. My husband has a large family. He has 6 sisters, and at one point, 2 or 3 of them were pregnant at once. And you find yourself in that sort of situation. You find that you are really saddened, but also happy. And you don't want to be a wet blanket to the people who are super excited. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, I would, being a total downer in that kind of scenario. So that kind of, I think it exacerbated my depression a little bit, in that the people around me were getting pregnant, people at church, people within the family, where you would see all the messages and all the pictures and everything. I was excited for them, and I wanted to show that I was excited, but I was also really sad. And unfortunately, when you go through something like that, it generally, obviously, it affects you the most. Most people remember it, but they also move on faster. So I didn't want to bring it back into everyone's mind that I had gone through this thing. But because it hadn't affected them in a super personal way, it was sad, it was upsetting, everybody was heartbroken over it. But then life went on. And I felt like for me, life didn't really go on in some ways. So to have all those pregnancies around me was really hard, because I didn't want to be a super depressed presence in the midst of all this joy, but I was still very much feeling what I was feeling. Let's see if I can put on eyeliner while I chat. We ended up moving to a different part of the state in order to pursue an opportunity to expand our business a bit. And that ended up being a really good thing for us, because one of the things that happened was that my husband was able to reconnect with his youth pastor. That made a huge difference in our lives, because before we didn't have much spiritual investment or involvement. We didn't have a church family supporting and encouraging us or looking out for us. And so our personal issues weren't being noticed by other people, because we didn't have other people. We hadn't built a community. So starting to go to church regularly made a huge difference in our personal lives, because all of a sudden there were people there that we let into our world, and they cared about us. And one of those people was my husband's former youth pastor, who was working at the church where we ended up. And that was a huge, huge blessing, because my husband was able to reconnect with that guy who was pretty influential in his earlier years. So we started attending the church regularly, meeting people, letting people into our lives, and we found a lot of healing there, a lot of emotional and spiritual healing. Went through some counseling and whatnot. This was overall a very good thing for us. Now, it had been a few years since the stillbirth. I experienced at least 2 more losses. Both happened before I knew that I was pregnant. One of them was, I just had a feeling that I was having a miscarriage. Even though I hadn't had a miscarriage before, but I had heard enough women talk about it that I kind of knew what it might entail. And then I took a test, a blood test, and it's like, yeah, your HCG hormone was high enough to indicate that you were pregnant, but no longer are. But that was a confirmed miscarriage. And then I had another one, which was not confirmed. Now, my midwife has since told me you don't want to count it as a loss unless it's been confirmed that you were pregnant. Because if you do that, and you say, I've had X number of losses, then at some point you considered high risk within the OBGYN community. And so I have had 2 confirmed losses. Then I had 1 or 2 other experiences that I think were miscarriages, but they were never confirmed that I was actually pregnant. And so it just sort of passed, and that was that. So that was about 6 years of radio silence. Now, when we lived in our previous state, and we had years of nothing really, we started to say, well, we feel like our family's not done. We just feel like there are more children out there for us to love. So maybe it's time to look into foster and adoption. So we started looking into it, and finances weren't really in place for us to do that. Nothing moved forward very quickly with the foster and adoption. Well, then we moved to the state where we are now. When we got here, we started looking again into foster and adoption, because there was nothing happening on the pregnancy front. And so we got so far as to have a worker come to our home and do a home study and telling us what we needed to do so that we could adopt a certain age range. And then I got pregnant again. And that was, that was really unexpected. So we put the foster stuff on hold. Everything went well. I know I talked about the birth story before, so I'll skip over that, but we ended up with another beautiful little baby girl in our arms. She is almost 1.5 years now, and she's awesome. And she's finally napping upstairs. She went quiet on me. So she's finally sleeping. And then a new pregnancy came along within a year. Well, within 2 years, I guess, whatever. I am almost halfway there. Next week, I think, is my halfway point. God doesn't care what the doctors have to say. He doesn't care what the medical profession deems is possible versus not possible. He doesn't care. If God wants to do something, he's going to do it. And that's been proven 2 times now with 2 beautiful, healthy, wonderful little girls. And then a couple other times that clearly we can get pregnant, which again, the doctors said would never happen. And I'm pregnant again, and things are going perfectly fine. I've been feeling the baby move, and my belly's growing, and I'm able to keep food down, and I'm not throwing up all the time, and I'm almost halfway there. It's just been a lot. It's been a roller coaster. So if you guys were curious why when I mentioned my pregnancy, I was like, hey, we were surprised too. That's why, because we were never supposed to be able to get pregnant. Each pregnancy has been a miracle, a medical miracle, very unexpected. And we're so grateful for the 2 children that we have now. They're absolutely awesome kids. We were never able to plan for children, and since God has given them to us, it's been quite an unexpected but really beautiful journey. It's been a really emotional journey with a lot of up and downs, but I think the losses have helped us appreciate what came later. You know, our little rainbow baby upstairs napping in her crib is an absolute joy. So much fun, such a blessing. I'm a silver lining kind of person where I see a situation, I'm like, okay, well, where's the good? Where can we find the good in this situation? And it did take a while, but finally I'm able to look back at what we've come through, and I'm able to see the good. I'm able to see the growth, the personal growth, the spiritual growth, the relational growth within our marriage, because that sort of thing has torn relationships apart. But fortunately, by the grace of God, we came out the other side stronger. Anyway, I know I've been talking for a while. This video is probably way too long, but I wanted to share with you guys some of the backstory as far as, you know, you might think, oh, you're pregnant. Why was that unexpected? Like, there's only one thing that leads to pregnancy. Well, yeah, in a way, and then there are a lot of contingencies on the back end. Thank you for hanging out with me. If you've been here this whole time and didn't turn off the video after 10 minutes, I appreciate you very much. I would love to hear if you've had any experience with this sort of thing, and if you feel comfortable commenting or mentioning something. I am always honored to hear other people's stories, and I appreciate your trust and your consideration. And until I see you in my next video, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.